Welcome to Embrace the Rain Farm and Homestead. I hope you guys are all having a wonderful day. If you're new here, thank you for coming and checking out this video. Please be sure to hit that like and subscribe button. And if you're not new here, we are still super excited that you're here and we hope you keep coming back. Now today we're going to be doing a garden tour and harvest. I'm going to be harvesting while I show you guys the garden because I have a lot that needs to be harvested. So let's go ahead and get started before we lose our sunlight. Now the garden is not perfect. This is a real life garden. I have projects with pieces laying everywhere, and that's just how it is. I also have people yelling in the background. That's just how it is always at my house. So yeah, if you don't like real life, then maybe this isn't the video for you. But if you are like me and feel like everything is a mess and you're always struggling to catch up, then keep watching because there's stuff sitting everywhere in the garden, but it's still growing food. So when we walk in, we have this trellis right here that has all of our cucumbers on it. Lots of cucumbers I need to pick. We have our weeping willow tree here, and then these are ground cherries around the base of it. Those need to get watered today. They're looking a little sad. Behind here we have I believe it's pronounced a roselle hibiscus in this thing, and she is looking beautiful. I'm really hoping she's going to bloom soon. But we walk underneath this trellis, and I love growing the cucumbers on this arched trellis. They just kind of fall through. We do kind of have to train these to be on here, but I really like it. So I just keep weaving the vines onto this trellis and keep them going up here. So I'm going to go ahead and harvest these cucumbers, and then we'll continue with our tour. I don't know what the dogs are so upset about today. Also, okay, let me show you guys this. I apparently have missed this guy the past couple of times I've harvested. Didn't even know it was there. So I'm going to go ahead and harvest that and rewrap this vine going up. You can see my cucumbers are not looking the best. They're definitely getting some damage. We're just going to let them go until they're not producing happy fruit anymore. And harvest those. Nice little bunch of cucumbers. I'm going to do the ground cherries last and not video that because there's a lot and it takes a while. I might even actually have the kids come do that. Where I was planting, so I made a video where I was planting these stacked planters. Now I do think I'm going to go a different route with these now. It's really hard to keep them watered. It is just so hot here that it's really hard. It's really hard to keep these watered. But our micro dwarf tomatoes are doing really good in here. We've got lots of fruit setting, so I'm super excited about these. And I might actually do like a tall version of this next year, or I've actually thought about doing this soon and going ahead and like filling them with micro dwarfs, and then instead of using my sprinkler that I normally water with, I'll just hand water my couple of towers, but it'll be tall, probably as tall as I am, and I will use like a T-post or something like that through the middle to make sure it doesn't fall over, because that's my biggest problem, is that they do fall over if you don't have a support through the middle. So we're going to add support. The beans do not love the stackable planters. Honestly, it's probably because I did not water them enough, and that'd be my fault. You could probably grow greens in them, You could probably grow green beans in them pretty well if you had them on a balcony or somewhere where you're gonna water them all the time. I forget. So yeah, they didn't get as much water as they needed. You guys, although this thing's a little lopsided, I don't care. I am so happy with how this is turning out. So this trellis has Serpente It's Serpent is how I say it, Serpent Gourd. I will post the spelling on here of everything so you guys can see how it's spelled and know exactly what I'm talking about. But over on this side coming up is Serpent Gourd, and those do really well even in the super, super crazy heat of central South Texas. And then this area, I believe this is Loofah. Behind that we have Birdhouse Gourd, and we have something else over on this backside. So there's 4 plants on this trellis. I'll have to look and see what those are. And then as you're walking into this, we have squash underneath here, some different types. That's squash. This is another type of squash. And then these are our patty pan squash. You can see we have a Birdhouse Gourd there. And then whatever this is just, it's covered in fruit. And then here's a little baby Serpent Gourd. That's not how you pronounce it again, but I have a hard time saying it the proper way. The way that I did this whole garden, the goal is to be able to fence it all in. We just haven't gotten to that point yet. So I kind of planned everything with that in mind. I have these pots just kind of hanging out everywhere, and most of these either have beans or zucchini in them as like a second round of beans or zucchini. Here is a decent sized Serpent Gourd. Now these will get huge. Once this reaches about the length of my forearm, that's when I'm going to go ahead and pick this. So it's not quite ready to be picked yet. This here at the end of this trellis this is the spelling of that because I don't know how to say it. A lot of these plants I don't know how to pronounce. The garden huckleberry, you guys, these things are prolific. And I actually had the animals break them off at the ground, quite a few of my plants, and they came back. There was nothing, not even a stem left. Like, it was literally whatever roots were in the ground, and they still came back, which is insane. All right, next. This is that squash that I just showed you the name of. Like, these are going to be huge. I'm really excited about these. Okay, so once we come through this huge trellis, the one that's leaning and crooked, again, not perfect, real life, we have this more square-shaped trellis, and I just have these kind of hanging in here. Most of these are ground cherries. Ideally, I would like to put flowers in them next time, something that'll just like hang out and be really pretty. So if you guys have any ideas for something that'll hang like that, let me know. This is going to be Hale's Best 45, which is like a cantaloupe. So that I am going to train onto this trellis. I planted that a little later, so it's not as far along. We have more of our raised beds, and as you can see, they're looking a little rough. I do still have some beans on some of them, but they're not growing very well. And then this is the name of this melon, and it's going crazy. We actually already have lots of little baby melons starting to cover it, and I'm hoping it'll do really, really good. All of my seeds, every single type of plant that I have planted out here, I ordered the seeds through rareseeds.com or Baker Creek, other than the micro dwarf tomatoes. So those I found on Etsy, and I did have a pretty decent germination rate, so I would probably order from them again, and I can actually post, if you're interested in their information, just let me know and I will link it in the comments. Behind me, this is a trellis that I did last year, so the end poles, as you can see, are really, really tall. Really tall, like way taller than I am. Eventually I want to add string at the top so that I can keep my tomatoes growing tall. But we have basil. This is Persian basil. These are a volunteer tomato, so I don't know what kind of tomato it is, but I've already gotten quite a few tomatoes off of there. This is a great white tomato that I grew from seed. It is not doing nearly as well as the volunteers. Another Persian basil that I came out here to find something had killed. I actually forgot this was down here, but we have a hot pepper right there. And then we have more tomatoes here. This is one of the first tomatoes I planted. It was a volunteer, and as you can see, we have things to harvest on here. I think I'm just going to walk you guys through the garden and then do my harvesting after. Okay, so we're going to walk through here. This is my very, very large trellis, and my goal was to actually grow under here, but that didn't work. So I think I'm going to plant things in planters and sit them under here. That it might just end up being something I do later on, more of a winter type of thing, but or I could do it now. We have a really long growing season, so I can plant stuff through July and still probably get a harvest, as long as I baby it with the heat. So over here we have see if I left the tag in. This is an Illinois squash. So we have the Illinois squash. It's starting to go up. I'm having to train this one. They have the little tendrils to grab on with, but they don't climb very well. You do have to kind of train them. Next on this trellis, we have, this is the Tahiti melon squash. And these are all growing pretty slow considering I planted them at the same time. So they're kind of slow. It could be because they're in the ground. I'm going to go on the outside because it's easier to show you what's growing. Okay, so I have all of my black-eyed peas and cowpeas here. They're really starting to go crazy. I'm super excited about those. I wanted to grow them last year and I didn't, so I'm really excited. This is our Illinois Tahiti. And then here we have the Iran squash. And again, like, these are pretty small. Next we have the lemon squash. If you do plant these peas, I don't know what the deal is, but if you look right there, see all the ants? And if your legs brush up against the end of these peas, the ants will climb on your legs and bite you. I could poison for them, but I try not to put any poison in the garden. And since they're not too bad anywhere else right now, I'm just kind of letting them have the peas. And they're not hurting the peas, so I'm just kind of letting them do their thing. But I just had to climb on my legs and bite me, so I'm going to have to be a little more careful. There is the lemon squash, and it's doing really good. Like, I think we're going to get a lot of that. And then we also have the bottle gourd over there as well, which part of this is the bottle gourd. I can actually see a baby up there. Let's see if I can get it to where you guys can see that baby, that little baby bottle gourd. Can you see that right there? I've never grown these either, so I'm really excited to see what they end up looking like. We have another basil here, and then, so kind of the way that this works is we have all the peas here, and then still have a lot of room on this side, so I have my sunflowers. This is the cut flower garden that we planted together. I'm really excited to show you guys that. Here is sunflowers and another willow tree. And then we have all of my potatoes. That's compost inside of that thing. We have dahlias, my greenhouse is a mess. Yes, this is real life. This is going to be another, what's it called? Hibiscus. Okay, so dahlias were something I was like really, really excited to grow. Look at how beautiful this is. Isn't that gorgeous? And then we have one over here. This one is more of an orange color. I'm going to try not to break it. Oh my gosh, and this one just opened today. Look how pretty. How gorgeous is that? Like, I am just over the moon about the dahlias. I started all of these from seeds. Nervous because I know it's better to get them as bulbs, but I bought the seeds and surprisingly they're doing really good. So maybe not as good as if I would have gotten them from bulbs, but I'm getting flowers. And that's all that matters. The whole point is to just grow something, learn as you go, and even if you fail at growing something, it's not really a failure. Just take the lessons that you learned during that and try again next year. That's the really cool thing about gardening is you have every year to try again. I don't think, let me see. With this hibiscus, I have dahlias in here as well. Look at that. Isn't she beautiful? Love the flowers. This is called a Jewel of Opar, if I'm saying that correctly. So there's kind of a funny story with this plant. I used to go to a plant exchange every year, and I got that plant at a plant exchange. I didn't know what it was. I just planted it. It has little bitty fine seeds, and so the seeds just kind of blow around in the wind and go wherever. And I had literally all of my plants die from the last house. I did not have a Jewel of Opar planted whenever we moved. And we moved here, we went through a really rough winter where everything died back. I mixed soil from different containers that I had brought with me and just like mixed up the soil and put it in other pots to kind of make things work and use the soil. And this Jewel of Opar started growing in one of these pots. So she's been transplanted into this pot where she is now, but she came from my old house that we lived at 3 years ago, and I had grown them. They just popped up wherever for probably 5 years. Like, I've had them growing in my gardens for at least 10 years, which is pretty crazy. Like in my potted plants, not really gardens because I never had a garden out there, but it is kind of a neat story. So I keep her around, even though she's a weed that spreads. I think they're pretty, and I love her. This is my dandelion bed, and these are pink dandelions. Trying to grow pink dandelions. They do not bloom on year one, so remember, keep that in mind. They will not bloom their first year. They bloom year 2. I didn't know that. I thought I was like, dandelions are supposed to be prolific. I'm pretty sure I'm doing something wrong. No, they just don't bloom till the second year. So don't beat yourself up about it if you have them planted and they haven't bloomed. I'm really hoping we get some seeds from these sunflowers. I don't really see any yet. The sunflowers, ants really like those as well. And ants really like okra too. So those are kind of some of the plants that you have to watch out for ants on. They'll just be all over the flowers. They really like the flowers. We planted this together, and the zinnias are the first things blooming, which I'm not surprised about. But this looks like it's going to be a green zinnia. I'll have to look up all of the names. Ooh, look. These are celosia. They're starting to bloom. That's a celosia down there. I'm pretty sure she's big. These tomatoes, one of them I planted in here because I needed to transplant it. The rest are chicken planted. So there are tomatoes in here as well, but I just like kind of transplanted one because it was doing bad, and the rest popped up by themselves. Look how pretty she is. Ugh, I'm in love. I'm just going to kind of go through and show you guys all the different varieties that are starting to grow. Look at that one. And that one. It's going to be so beautiful over the next few weeks because everything is just popping up and coming to life. Look at that. I'm so excited about this fit bed. And all we did is throw the seeds in here, you guys. We did not do anything special. We put mushroom compost and threw some seeds on top. How gorgeous is that going to be? Oh, I'm so excited. Okay, next we're gonna go over behind all of the trellises that I showed you at the beginning of this video and show you the okra. We also have, the okra is out of control. I have not picked for 3 days. So it's actually 2 that I didn't pick. Today would be the 3rd day. And I really need to be picking every day at this point. Like I have some I'm definitely gonna have to feed to the pigs because they're just out of control. Okay, here is my okra row. So my okra goes all the way down here behind everything. I had a couple not come up, which I'm not sad about because I wouldn't have a walkway. They've gotten so much bigger than I thought they were going to get. And then here are all the squash that I showed you guys before, the lemon squash, the bottle gourd, and we'll go on the other side in a minute. There's really just this watermelon, but there's a really big watermelon I want to show you. So the okra, these aren't too terribly bad on this plant. There's just a couple of small ones. Okay, so before I started filming, I was looking. That one's not even that bad. But there's some giant ones on one of these plants. It's this plant. Look at this. They'd be huge. So, and there's one up in there. That's an okra right there. So, yeah. I don't know how much I'm going to have to toss, but that's my row of okra. And then over here we have watermelons. I do need to come and support these because they're getting a little big. So I'm just going to take some mesh or some fabric and make a basket and tie it back up to the trellis to just support these watermelons. This melon is not doing good. She died. So I don't really know what happened there. Then we're just going to pull this whole pot, dump it out, and start over with something else. Probably cucumbers. This, I need to come and start training this to the trellis. This is a Kiku chrysanthemum melon. And then this one I've kind of been helping onto the trellis already. And her tag, see how there's like a crack? Her tag is in that crack somewhere. So she's going to be a surprise. Not really positive what this is. I'm pretty sure some type of small melon. But yeah, we're just all going to be surprised together because I don't know what it is. Oh, I never showed you guys this side of this trellis either. The square trellis. Right here we have Jack Be Little pumpkins. And they are so cute. And then all along this back area here where the grass is kind of taking over, we have the garden huckleberries. It is time for me to pick a bunch, so I will do that after this video. I'm done showing you guys around the garden. I'll just do a time lapse of me harvesting fruit. Look at her hiding in there. That one is almost touching the ground. Completely shaded by this beautiful basil that is covered in flowers. I'm going to have basil everywhere next year. I'm not sad about it either. This is a volunteer cherry tomato. It's not really producing a lot, but it's not hurting anything there, so I'm just leaving her. I'll be really careful. These watermelon vines are going crazy, but look at that girl. So this one is big. Like, super excited. I believe this is a sugar baby watermelon. And the one I just showed you is also a sugar baby watermelon. And then, I believe, not positive, I'd have to re-look at tags. And then we have one there. We have one in there. I have a kitty cat. We have a little baby right there. We have one sitting in this container. And then as we stand up, we have 1, 2, 3. There's a little baby one there. So we get lots of watermelon, which means I can perfect my watermelon jelly and watermelon rind jelly recipes because my first attempt didn't turn out very good. Alright, now we're going to go all the way to the end of the garden where I have added rows. You guys watched me build these rows. This is all corn. This is all corn. I have them planted very, very thick. I don't know how well that's going to turn out, but I'm just letting them do their thing. On the ones that I noticed really heavy silks coming in and the flowers were already looking like this, I went ahead and broke off the flower and hand pollinated the silks. I only did this on like 3 plants this morning. I really want to make sure we get some corn. This whole row and that whole row, all corn. And then those are my chickies. My chickies. We have some turkeys in there, 1 goose, and some ducks. So they're all hanging out back there. Right here on the back side of the garden, we have 3 rows. The ones closest to the chickens are 2 corn rows of corn. And then right here closer to the garden, I planned on having an entire row of sunflowers. Okay, so the sunflowers, we had a really bad germination rate, so I went ahead and sowed some beans, some green bush beans. So I have a couple of sunflowers, and then this is all beans. There's a sunflower, beans. There's 2 pepper plants that were doing really bad where they were, so I moved them, and then more beans. So hopefully we'll get a good amount of beans out of this space. The cats also really like walking through here, and the dogs, so they're also getting broken, which is joys of having animals, right? I've showed you this entire half of the garden. We still have all of this back here, and then I have all this open space that I'm still going to do something with because none of these are planted, and that's a big area. So I really need to get out here next week. We have a pretty busy rest of this week, but next week I would really like to get out here and plant in here. I'll have to be planting. If you guys have any ideas of what to plant in this area in the south in the middle of July, I would love some suggestions. I know I'm going to do some more cucumbers, and then maybe another round of like yellow squash, zucchini squash, things like that, just that come up really quickly. And then I'm taking some cuttings from my tomatoes that are doing really, really good. I'm going to cut off some of the suckers and put those in water in the house so they can get growing really well. And I'm going to plant some of those. So hopefully I'll have a second round of fresh tomatoes, like fresh plants for the fall. And then the other thing, oh yeah, I will also be doing more of the dwarf tomatoes out here. So I will probably just, like I said before, go ahead and stack all these stackable planters, make some really tall stacks, and fill those with these micro dwarf tomatoes, because for as crappy as I have taken care of them, we have quite a few that are just pretty loaded with fruit, which is pretty promising considering, guys, I'm not the best gardener. Like, I'm not. And when something grows really well, even with my very, very neglectful self, it's pretty nice. Down, this is that last stand-up row I showed you with the volunteer tomato. We also have a pepper in there, and then I believe I got distracted. That's pretty common. And then here I have a tomato. Let's see, what is this? So this is some type of green Dr. Witchy's maybe tomato. We do have lots of fruit set on here. At the bottom, I don't see any more blossom setting fruit, so I believe it's starting to get too hot. I'm hoping we get some cool enough days that these will all start producing or starting to set fruit as well. This tomato does not look great at the bottom. I need to come and prune her, but she's still creating pretty healthy fruit. And she is still growing. Like, compared to those really tall poles, she's almost at the top. I'm not pulling her out. Like, she is doing really phenomenal. I am going to take cuttings off of her. This is a volunteer, probably came from kitchen scraps. It's growing so well. I will not be pulling that out. I'm just going to take cuttings, and hopefully I can get some more plants off of her and another harvest. I believe that's mullein. This is an amaranth. so many flowers. Look at these sunflowers. I could not grow a flower last year to save my life. So these flowers bring me so much joy. Oh, look. Here's some more micro dwarf tomatoes. I just pulled this off while I watered last night so they could get a good watering. I mean, these flowers though, you guys, they are just so beautiful. This is a reminder that if you had a problem growing something in the past, it does not mean you are bad at growing. It just means there was something that was lacking or something didn't go right, but that does not mean that you cannot grow it again. I couldn't get a single sunflower to grow last year. 95% of the flowers I planted did not grow. And this year, they're doing phenomenal. Your garden is going to get better and better each year. Just don't give up. Keep putting stuff in the ground. The plants want to grow. This is, oh gosh, I keep telling you guys, I'm going to remember what it is, and I don't. Navajo Sunset. I planted her last year. She has just continued. I've taken tons of cuttings off of her for flower arrangements, and she's just growing like crazy. We have basil in this bed. All this back here, these are all tomatillos of some type. We have another tomatillo that's actually following along this trellis, which is really cool. I have some baby cucumbers coming up in here. There's one. There's one. I know I planted more than 3, but there's one in there. You can barely see it, but it's like right back there. And then I don't know what that is, but it's growing, and it looks like the bugs are eating it more than they're eating my plants. So I'm gonna leave it, let the bugs do their thing. Another sunflower. I just kind of threw sunflowers all in this bed. Here's another one. This, I believe, is one of my biggest tomatoes. It's kind of hard to reach with the camera. In the entire garden. Look how pretty. That is a Whopper tomato. It's the only one on here. Everything else kind of died off, but I'm really hoping it grows. I believe this is either a black creme or I have a couple of tags in here. This big tomato, I'm not sure what it is. I have quite a few tags in here. I had more tomatoes and only one made it. And I don't know which tomato is that one. It might be the black creme, but because it's so light, I don't think it is. So it's a tomato. You know, at the end of the day, it's a tomato. Now, this other tomato is, I believe it's the Thornberry's Terracotta. Again, lots of mix-ups here in this bed, which is okay, but it happens. She has more tomatoes. She has a lot of blossoms dropping, but she also has some really large tomatoes. So if you've ever grown the Thornberry Terracotta, let me know if this looks like her. Let's see. So see, she's dropping a lot of blossoms, but we are still setting some fruit. There's one back here. So I'm hoping as this tree continues to give her more shade, she keeps setting fruit. Now, this over here is a mess. This one here is a Dr. Witchy's Yellow that I grew from seed. I don't see any fruit on her. None. No fruit on that plant. This plant, this humongous, she doesn't look big, but like she's taller than I am. See all that on the ground? That's all the same plant. This whole tomato area is one plant. This is another volunteer. Popped up in my pig pen. I dug it up like right after the last frost, and she was already like a foot tall. Stuck her in this bed in the corner, and I have gotten more tomatoes off this plant than anything else in the garden, and she is still just loaded down. Look at all this. And I I need to prune her, but she's just out of hand and I can't. I'm just gonna let it go and see what happens. So we have lots of fruit. Some of it is getting eaten by bugs. There's some bug damage, but you know what? I'm still getting a lot of good fruit. Just letting it go. So there's some other stuff in here I'll show you guys, but this bed here was a repurposed rabbit cage. It has a tomato right here, a volunteer tomato I dug up. I dug up a lot of tomatoes this year. There's a marshmallow here in the corner, I think. Yeah, this is a marshmallow. No flowers yet, but it's very, very tall and healthy looking. And then all this crazy vining going on. I needed to thin out my birdhouse gourds, so I just pulled them, threw them in the ground over here, thinking, tells you that gourds don't do good with transplants. You shouldn't transplant your gourds, direct sow them, yada, yada, yada. These were like big when I transplanted them, and I definitely disturbed the roots. No doubt about it, I broke roots. We are getting birdhouse gourds on here. This one's getting eaten by bugs because it's like on the ground almost, but I didn't have anything in that space, and I don't have anything on the ground here, so I'm just going to kind of let it flow out and be on the ground here. If it wants to, it can go up this tree, and just going to let it do its thing. So back over here, this is a repurposed cage as a trellis. It's very tall enough for me to walk. Each of these are 8 feet, so it's 8 feet on each side, plus it's sitting up in the bed, so it's pretty tall. I had peas growing on here. I did, at the bottom of this is where you saw those cucumbers, and then on this side I planted cucumbers. I don't know if they're coming up yet. I haven't seen any. We have the chocolate bell peppers, sweet chocolate bell peppers here. These are really good. I am not a fan. We have some, so there's some, look, more tomatoes down in there. The peppers, like, I'm not just going to take and snack on a pepper. I don't really like peppers. But I really like adding them for flavor. And so I did stuffed bell peppers with some of these. And my husband, who also doesn't really like peppers that much, he was like, man, these are good. Like, these peppers have a good flavor. And he just, like, was able to pop the whole thing in his mouth and ate the stuffed bell pepper when normally he just scrapes out the inside. So I ate a little bit of it, not as much as he did because I'm a little pickier. But it was a lot better than any of the other bell peppers I've tried. And I highly suggest the sweet chocolate bell pepper. There's one there. There. I mean, these are just loaded with fruit. This is a orange spice jalapeno. If you pick these green and you're going to process them, wear gloves. They are very potent. We picked some of them, picked them underripe, and I can't remember if they get spicier as they get their color or less spicy, but my fingers burned for like 2 days. It was ridiculous. So if you're going to grow those orange spice and you're sensitive to heat, I would say wear gloves. I'm not like a huge hot person when it comes to my food and peppers and stuff, so they were pretty intense. And the meal that I made with them was like, whew. For me, it was really spicy, but I don't do a lot of spice, so for other people it would probably be fine. The other side of that bed with all of there's the tomato. I have a couple of tomatillos that I pulled out of my yard. We give a lot of scraps to our pigs, and we had moved them, and these were all growing in their old pen. And then that birdhouse gourd, you can kind of see a little baby gourd right there. We have some potatoes here. I planted these late. I don't know if they're going to bulb. I had them and needed to put them in the ground, so we'll see what happens. Okay. This right here is a volunteer from last year. It's just kind of in random spots all over the garden. I had it planted in a tire planter like right there last year, and of spinach, but the texture is very different. I need to try it again this year. I have not. I tried it last year and I wasn't a huge fan. I'm going to try it again this year though and see if I like it maybe sauteed or with more vegetables, because I primarily had that spinach as my greens, and I think I need some other greens thrown in there. Here we have tomato. It does have quite a bit of fruit just kind of here and there, all over it. Not huge groupings. Another tomato there. And then we have a marigold that is just like laying on the ground. And then these are all eggplants. So the rest of this is going to be eggplant. We have more sweet chocolate bell peppers. I'm so glad I grew as many of these as I did because they are so tasty. They're just everywhere. Again, this is the eggplant. I have not actually seen an eggplant starting to grow on these, but we've got lots of flowers. So I'm also not a huge fan of eggplants. So if we don't get any eggplants, I'm not gonna like cry about it. But I've heard that they're a good trap crop for bugs. So I just throw them in here. We're gonna see what happens. End of the eggplant, we have these ginormous, just massive marigolds. Like, look how big that is. And the plant itself, see if I can show you this. Like, look how big around that is. And it has roots everywhere. I could probably take cuttings and root them. This thing is huge. Here's another little micro dwarf tomato. We've got some little tomatoes in there. This one's not looking that great. We've got lots of aerial roots, probably trying to soak up the moisture since I don't water as consistently as I should, but it's still alive and it's still producing fruit. We have a smaller one here. We have another one there. This is asparagus. Then we have lemon balm. There's also spearmint in here, but it is really getting taken over by the lemon balm. So here is the spearmint. And then, okay, so that is that bed. All of this, we've gone over all of that. Lots of space. I love it. Most of these have herbs, strawberries, and celery. I'm really bad with names. Here we have a row of primarily tomatoes. So these are all tomatoes. We have lots of ripe tomatoes in here. And then over here we have some ground cherries, Jack Little Pumpkin, a tomato that has completely fallen over. I just noticed that, so I'm going to have to fix it. This is a watermelon. Holy cow. She just got too big and completely toppled over. I might fix it. I might just see what happens with that this year. I have a lot of tomatoes. This is another marshmallow. We had some flowers, so I'm really excited. I'm going to try to save seeds. We have a couple of plants in here, so we should get more flowers. This is a hollyhock. I realized that they get a lot bigger than what I gave them room for, so I might just need to move those. Another volunteer tomato I popped in here, and even if we only get those 5 tomatoes, I didn't have anything else planted here, so that's fine. Back here I have either a cucumber or a gourd of some type or a melon. I don't remember what I planted there and I didn't label it, so we're going to find out together. We have another couple of garden huckleberries. These did not produce as much fruit. They got big. These produced less fruit than the smaller ones that were in full sun. This is a very shady area, so I'm not sure if they need more sun to produce as much, but those did not produce as much. God, it is scorching out here. I want to thank you guys for hanging out with me. After this video, I will do a time lapse of me harvesting all this amazing food, so that's going to come up and be a video after this one. And I just want to remind you guys that even if you feel discouraged, if things are not going great in the garden, be thankful for the lessons you're learning along the way and just keep trying, because it does get better. Every year it gets a little bit better, so just keep growing something. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.